What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again once again, and today, people, in an attempt to keep things a little more positive like they have been on my channel, we're going to talk about one of my favorite Destiny 2 retcons in recent memory. Now, because every video is somebody's first, what exactly is a retcon? Well, according to our friend Merriam-Webster, in film, television, or other fictional work, a retcon is a piece of new information that imposes a different interpretation on previously described events, typically used to facilitate a dramatic plot shift, or account for an inconsistency. Now, sometimes retcons are bad and don't make any sense whatsoever, but sometimes, like today, they're great. Retcons get a bad reputation because largely when people are talking about retcons, they're talking about bad ones. But, for example, I Am Your Father is quite possibly one of the most famous retcons of all time, and it's a good one. Or take the death of Sherlock Holmes, for example, where Sir Arthur Conan Doyle employed retroactive continuity to explain Sherlock Holmes' return after his death in an earlier story fighting his enemy, Professor Moriarty. So clearly, retcons aren't always bad, which brings us to Destiny lore. Now, before we get into it, a minor bit of setup. The lore piece we're talking about today is brought to us courtesy of the Necrotic Grip Warlock Exotic Gauntlets. In it, we see a warlock scientist, because, of course, it's always a fucking warlock, experimenting with Dredgen Yor's prized thorn. We have no clue how he got it, just that they have it. Previously, we've been led to believe that Shin got Thorn and hid it away. To further compound this, the lore card makes a note that the Shadows of Yor already exist. So, everything that made up the journey of Shin studying and recreating Thorn, then creating the Shadows of Yor, had already happened. Now, could this warlock have stumbled upon Thorn? Or could Shin, more likely, have handed it over for more testing, more research? Absolutely. As stated, a retcon doesn't mean the author made an error, though that's when retcons are talked about. But retcon only means retroactive continuity. This is something Destiny does all the time, and I think it's an important clarification most people miss when talking about any piece of lore. So allow me to reiterate. Not all retcons are bad! And I think this is a perfect example of a good one. But without further ado, let's dive into not just one of the best retcons in Destiny lore, but a fairly decent horror story. Project Day 2. I just got my first look at artifact H349. It's heavier than expected. More than a few people questioned if we should even study something with such a dire legacy. But if we can't understand our enemy's tools, then we leave ourselves vulnerable to them. Project Day 5. Ran our first test on the artifacts. Let's call them necrotic properties. We used cattle. They were large enough to survive the initial discharge. The results have been upsetting. No more animal testing. Project Day 30. Spectral analysis is back, and we've got nothing. The artifact doesn't operate like traditional hive tech, which is our closest analog. A cult of deranged fanatics can mass-produce knockoffs, but we can't even tell what it's made from? Project Day 31. We had an accidental discharge. Cairo, lab tech over in 4B, human, so this is going to be it for him. We've got someone staying with him as the corruption spreads. At the very least, there's so much more to study now. As we watch his unfortunate deterioration, he's been babbling since it hit his central nervous system, saying, "I'm reborn," or variations thereof. I think he almost sounds happy. Project Day 39. The Vanguard forbade a postmortem, but a few of us couldn't stomach the idea of Cairo's sacrifice being in vain. The results have been insightful. Off the record, I'm keeping a few of his tissue samples. It almost feels like having him around again. Project Day 41. We began the day with another moment of silence for our lost colleague. Too bad he's not around to appreciate it. We keep thinking about H349 as a destroyer, but it's more sophisticated than that. I mean, with a normal gun, it's just boom, done. H349, on the other hand, is deadly, but not destructive, much like a viper. Its bite does not bring about instant death. Instead, the venom cajoles. It co-ops your beating heart into a death clock, ticking down your last moments. Your own pulse kills you. Death may be slow and agonizing for its victim, but the viper, time is an amenable trade for efficiency. Project Day 51. Yaniv has been crying a lot lately. We must accept that tragedies happen. It's a hard lesson to learn. Project Day 65. Another accidental discharge today. We realized that yours little creation is hungry, so we fed it more. It certainly performs in exchange. The activity is intriguing after a feast. I've been able to follow Yaniv's degradation with a more analytical mind than when we lost Caro. I have to say, the process is so elegant. The science involved almost seems poetic. It may be reproducible. Just imagine how much more I could have learned if the scanners were all active at the time. Project Day 77. Another accidental discharge. This time, I ensured the scanners were running beforehand. Audio logs of Warlock and researcher Jana 14, salvaged after evacuation. To reiterate something I said at the start of the video, when we talk about retcons, it's usually in the negative, because it often takes something away from the lore or is done poorly. Necrotic Grip, however, adds so much to the world of Destiny. It's amazing. First, it chronicles the descent into madness brought about by the use and/or proximity to Dredgenyor's Thorn, which is really fucking cool. And the fact that it's an exo warlock makes it all the better. Because, let's be real, let's be honest, let's be real honest, most warlocks, narratively speaking, are already at least half insane, so this is par for the class. Then you take the class, famous for killing themselves for glimpses of information, then you hand them quite possibly one of, if not the most dangerous weapon ever created, with little to no oversight, and you wonder, what's the worst that could happen? See lore card. The other fascinating thing for me was learning what Thorn does to normal organic life forms. You have this excerpt from Project Day 31. At least, there's so much more to study now, as we watch his unfortunate deterioration. He's been babbling since it hit his central nervous system, saying, "I'm reborn," or variations thereof. I think he almost sounds happy. Or the excerpt from Project Day 45, where our warlock, clearly descending into madness, describes the way that Thorn actually kills things, like a viper. Really, really cool. And that's such a fitting metaphor for the corruption, because it's not just a weapon of one-way destruction, as we see with the warlock's descent into madness, and the last couple of entries, which reveal what we all suspected the entire time. During Project Day 71, another accidental discharge. This time, I ensured the scanners were running beforehand. I absolutely fucking love that ending. And then you look at the necrotic grasp gauntlets, and you can see that it's actually made of human flesh. Bungie didn't have to do that. That's some really good and kind of fucked up visual storytelling. And yeah, that's just a piece of lore that I wanted to share, one that retconned in new information about Thorn and how it works, and it did nothing but add to the lore, which is fucking amazing and is the gold standard by which things should be retconned. But if you like these kind of short and sweet lore discussions, let me know in the comments below. Remember to like this video, but only if you did. Subscribe for more. Feel free to donate to my Patreon if you're feeling particularly generous. But above all else, stay frosty.